What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to show you how to do a very easy Raksha kill with necromancy. So hopefully you guys use this method and get some greater ricochets at 6kc. So one little disclaimer before I get deeper into this video. I am going to be going over how to bladed dive the pools as well as the final phase, but I would also kind of expect you to already know how to do it at a very basic level because I'm not going to be going into too much detail. And also, we're basically skipping almost every other mechanic in some way or another, or the mechanics are so easy to deal with that I'm not really going to go over them too much. And I would already expect you to know the basic Raksha fight. And then finally, much like the Raziel method that I posted, this is just going to be a very straightforward, like basic guide. There are a ton of ways to improve this method if you want to put in a little bit more effort or use keybinds or whatever. But this is mainly for people who just want the easiest time possible, don't really have keybinds set up or anything like that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is boost your HP a little bit. Although it's not 100% necessary, you can come to Anchronia here with a tier 2 base camp and use the thermal bath treatment. And this boosts your HP, and then you can also go over here to War's Retreat and boost your HP at the bonfire. And although this isn't absolutely necessary, I've found that boosting your HP makes these methods just significantly more consistent and a little bit easier. Especially if you're using full first necromancer, it is just nice to have the boosted HP. So moving on to the preset, you can see the relics we use are going to be Fury of the Small, Conservation of Energy, and Death Ward. You probably don't actually need Death Ward. You could use, whatever here, but I think Death Ward is the best because it's the only thing that actually does anything. So yeah. For the familiar, it's just a Ripper Demon with scrolls and then set it to 1 auto fire rate for the fastest fire rate. And then we're using Spiritweed Incense Sticks also to boost that damage. Moving on to the gear. The gear is pretty straightforward. You could probably make a little bit of modifications to this, but I really don't know how far you could deviate from what you see. Like, I would probably use 4 pieces of First Necromancer minimum. You can maybe use like a piece of the Death Warden set, like a body or something, to have more HP. But yeah, I wouldn't really go too much lower than what you see here. You could probably get away with tier 90 weapons, but the kills would be a little bit slower, and you obviously would have to deal with maybe a few more mechanics, but tier 90 should be perfectly viable. We're not using the tier 95 spec or anything like that, so it should just be a little bit slower. The only thing from the gear that I think is absolutely required is probably the Zuck Cape, and then obviously the Amulet of Souls too, but yeah. The Zuck Cape is just really strong here. We're using so many Death Skulls, you're just getting an absurd amount of damage with this. As for the auras, any DPS aura works, but I think Majra is probably the best. Any Scripture probably works, but obviously the full Scripture is going to be a little sketchy if you're using that. So moving on to the inventory, you can see it's a pretty basic inventory, just overload, food, Cerebrus, the basic stuff, Excalibur, Shard, the imp box or whatever is in there, the puzzle box is in there to stall adrenaline. Most people would probably have that in their tool belt. And then Vuln Bombs. I find Vuln Bombs are probably pretty important for this. They speed up the kills by just an insane amount, so they're definitely worth using. But as for the things highlighted in green, you can see it's the Scythe with Laceration Boots. And this is because you absolutely need this to bladed dive the pools. You might be able to get away with something like a Lanikius Spear or a Dragon Rider Lance, but you might need some different perks on that depending on, or you'd have to switch your prayer or something to like get the minimum hit to be high enough. But the Scythe is pretty good about that. Then we have the Power Burst of Vitality, and we use this to basically just block all of the damage from the Rockfall. And then the last thing we have is the Enhanced Replenishment Potion. And the reason we use this over the Renewal is because the Renewal, you have to use like Tick Perfect. And if it's going to be a more casual method, this potion gives you a lot more room to like use the potion. You can use the potion basically anytime in between using Living Death. And after you use the soul sap ability that comes right after living death, you know, 2 ticks after that, you have 5 tick window to activate this potion rather than a 0 tick window where you have to do it tick perfect. So I think it just makes it a lot easier for most people, I would think. But obviously the renewal is better if you're going to be tick perfect. The perks we're using for this are just standard best in slot PVMing perks. The only thing to really note is that the Impatient 4 perk is pretty much required for this in order to make the adrenaline work out in any sort of consistent manner. And then for the Scythe, you're going to want to have Precise 6 on it, and also probably some form of Equilibrium. In some cases, maybe even up to Equilibrium 4. You know, especially if you have like a Lanikia Spear or a lower damaging weapon. Basically, the reason for that is because you want to be one-hitting the pools, and if you don't have like a Zuck Cape and Reaper Crew and like stuff like that, you might not have a minimum hit above the life points of the pool, so sometimes you won't actually one-shot them, and you want to kind of avoid that as much as possible. And having things like Precise 6, Equilibrium 4, the Hybrid Zuck Cape or Reaper Crew, or even switching your Prayer or something like that, can all be really good ways to, you know, increase your minimum hit above 1,000 life points for the pool, so you always one-hit it. But yeah, other than that, standard best in slot PVMing perks. But yeah, that's pretty much everything that's necessary in the inventory. Again, I don't really know how much I would suggest downgrading from this, but yeah, with this setup you see here, it is pretty good. Alright, so before we start the Raksha kill, there are a couple things that I want to go over. The first is going to be in the settings. If we go over here into the settings, and then we so we want to go into the targeting thing in combat and action bar, this targeting setting, and you can see here, target scenery with targeted movement abilities. You want to make sure this is unchecked. Basically, what this does is it makes it so Bladed Dive isn't able to interact with like weird objects like the security gate, for example here, or in the kill itself, like there's these chains and like random other garbage all over the place. And your Bladed Dive is actually able to click onto that like object, even though it's like an object, and it'll screw everything up. So make sure you have that setting turned off, otherwise you'll probably like screw up your Bladed Dive and it's really annoying. The second thing is going to be, much like with the Raziel video, I set up a little action bar here. Basically the way that this works is we go into the settings again, and we go to combat and action bar, and then action bar here. And basically all we do is have additional action bar, in this case additional action bar number 2, and then we just turn that on to whatever bar you're going to be using for this. For me it's number 13, and basically it just adds this additional little bar onto the screen here, and this has everything pretty much you need to do throughout the kill on one bar, and then your just Revo bar goes crazy. And basically the way that this works is everything that you do in the beginning of the kill is in line right here, and then everything else you'll need throughout the kill is right here, and then we just have food keybound here, which leads me into the keybinds. We're not really going to be using keybinds for this method for combat, or for attacking I should say, but there are a couple keybinds that you probably want to have set up. The first is going to be food. You're probably not going to eat too much, but it is nice to have food here just in case you make a mistake or something like that. The other keybind you're going to want is the Bladed Dive button keybind. So I can just hit a button on my mouse and it activates the Bladed Dive, as you can see, so that I can just Bladed Dive. But I need boots to do that. So yeah, I think the Bladed Dive button is super important to have keybound to something. I think on your mouse is probably the easiest way to do this. If you have like those 2 little buttons on the side or something like that, definitely keybind that. And that should really be the only keybinds you need to have set up. Everything else you can like click with your mouse, it's not too hard. But yeah, I would highly suggest food and Bladed Dive keybound. Alright, so I am going to do a little talk through here now of a kill. And as you can see, we have the little action bar right up here. And we're using Darkness, Soul Split, and Sorrow for this method. So make sure all of your buffs are on. everything is active and ready. And then we just go in the instance, and you can see the action bar that I use for Revo is on screen here. It's the same one we used for Raziel. But anyway, we enter the instance, and we summon all of our guys and surge forward, and then we invoke death, and then we command a Vengeful Ghost and surge forward one more time. And then right before Raksha spawns, we use Split Soul, click on Raksha, and Vuln Bomb. And then if you need to, you can Excalibur. You don't always need to. But then we just wait till we get Living Death. Living Death and a Dren Pot right now. And now we walk backwards. If you do it right, it'll look just like that, where you walk backwards right as you Death Skulls. And then we will be able to phase it super easily here. So we phase it, and then all we do here is use the Vitality right as the first rock hits. So right now, as you can see. And then we pretty much just tank all the rocks like that. Maybe you'll have to eat, but usually you don't have to. But yeah, as you can see, we got that third Death Skulls in under the Living Death. And we pretty much just chill out here and wait till it phases. Right now it phases, and you can see we Death Skulls again. And then we pretty much just walk around here or reflect or do whatever you want to deal with the rocks here. And then after the rocks, we put on the boots and the scythe, and we bladed dive the pools. If you need to, eat during this, because if you stand on the pools, it will hurt you. And also, then just walk back into Raksha, use Threads of Fate, and then you can Threads of Fate to kill the little dinosaur guy here, Manifestation. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now we just kill Raksha. If you need to, you can Vuln Bomb again here. If your damage is low like this, I probably wouldn't. I'd just save it for the next phase. But yeah, you can spam Finger of Death and whatever to try to phase it here. If you see what happens here, well, it didn't happen, but if you get the next mechanic, it will stun you and you have to freedom and then just run away from the little things on the ground. Pretty easy to deal with. I didn't get it that time, but sometimes you might get it, especially with tier 90s. But yeah, then we just stand over here and deal with the final phase, which is pretty easy. All you can see here is 2 attacks, and then we walk backwards, deal with the tail swipe, and walk back in, and that's it. Very easy to deal with. So you just walk back out, walk back in, very easy. And now we just break this little shield here, which is super easy with Living Death up. You can like Finger of Death manual cast there if you need damage. And then pretty much just walk around wherever and instantly activate this. And then same thing, we just dodge the swipes here. Super easy, as you could see. So the best way I have found to do this is you walk back, click on Raksha, and then walk back in and click on Raksha. And as long as you get the timing right, it'll look just like that. And yeah, then you insta-kill it and get like a 3-minute kill. I found if you do this a little bit better, you could probably get somewhere like a 2:30 with this method, but 3 minutes is a pretty average kill time for this. And yeah, it's really straightforward once you understand what you're doing, especially with the bladed dive part. The thing about bladed dive is when you bladed dive, you want to bladed dive and then click on the next pile of like blobs and then bladed dive onto them after you've already targeted them. So here we have a clip that I just have zoomed in and tried to watch my mouse cursor. So you can see when I bladed dive the pool, I start clicking on the ground towards the next blobs, so my character starts moving that way. You can see how I click the bladed dive and then click the ground and then click the bladed dive and then click the blob. And if you do it correctly, you kind of walk through the blobs, so you can instantly bladed dive, and then you know, you're already in range and everything like that, and you don't actually really take damage from the like blobs themselves, because you've killed them all and you're already moving to the next one, so you're like already past them, if that makes sense. Thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you guys use this method to get some easy Raksha kills. This boss is a little finicky, it's a little weird, but I think once you get the hang of it, it's really not too bad. So you guys made it this far in the video, definitely drop a like on it. It really does help. And I will see you in the next one.